Are we right to start then, Mark?
Yeah, you can start now.
Right. Okay. Right. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Just before we get to item 1, we have an extremely packed agenda tonight, more than normal. A lot of items on it, and you guys have this year or the last few months have probably spent more time in meetings and doing more work than ever before, and I really do thank you all for it. Thank you. There's an awful lot of work going on. To try and avert us having a second meeting, I do want to try and canter through as we can. We mustn't not say anything that's important, and we even obviously need to introduce an emergency item just between 3 and 4, which is the yellow lines, Queen Street and Bridge Street. All I would say is, if we can, let's keep it moving. But obviously, if you've got a valuable opinion, let's hear it, please. So, and again, if any residents are watching this, I will need to take this pace a little bit quicker than normal, because these councillors are flat out, and as it is, I doubt very much they'll finish before 10. Sorry. Okay, so if I just move to item 1, firstly, apologies, Anita. I think we've had an apology from John, didn't we? And you're on mute, Anita, sorry. I think everyone's on mute and you'll need to unmute, sorry. Still on mute? There you go.
Yeah. Apologies came in from John, and then David Rushton sent a text saying he'd be just a few minutes late.
Okay, and as we understand, I think Terry's having some technical difficulties. Okay.
Oh, I didn't get one from him.
I think
unless
Paul,
I logged off again after he'd sent it.
No problem. And in terms of declarations of interest, I'll kick that off. I obviously have an interest in one of the planning applications. So that's my house. So obviously, when we get to that point, I'll either stay quiet or leave the meeting, whatever we can.
I'll put you in the waiting room, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Very hands-off.
That part, I presume.
Thank you.
Right. I'm just letting the members of the public in, Chair.
Great. Thank you.
There you go. They're all in.
Okay. Super. Any other declarations of interest? Again, with such a packed agenda, it's a little bit tricky to discern if we do have one. Splendid. Okay, so item 2A, a question sent in by members of the public. I know certainly, Doug, you yourself had a question, which you outlined, I think, in a note to Anita. Take the floor, Doug, for a short period. You're on mute, my friend. There you
Sorry
go.
about that.
That's all right.
Yes, in December I came and asked a question on the same subject, and which was the grids, the road grids in Wood Street, and you agreed to seek a supplementary cleaning of them in the circumstances that we discussed and we were at one on. Since then, I've met, and this is the point I was seeking to make in the notes I sent to Anita. Since then, one of my neighbours and I were talking about, he had observed the actual work being done. Now, the work that was done related to what I think of as the standard grids in the gutter. What I was concerned with, and I hope I made it clear at the time, was the other ones that have the ironwork in the curb, and they were not, my neighbour says, they were not dealt with when the routine cleaning was done some weeks, whatever it was, before December, for which you need different equipment. You can't just use the same one. And so the grids in the curb haven't been done for possibly some years now. And I walked up the whole street this evening before it went dark, and I could see 2 or 3 inches of rubbish in some, and others were more difficult to see. They are very overdue for being cleaned, and that is what I was concerned with before, but I might not have been quite clear enough when I was with you in December. And the purpose of my question is to see whether we can get the specific cleaning done on the other grids, which were not touched at a point sometime in the second half of last year.
Sounds like a sensible question. Anybody got any comment or partial answer to Doug on that? Did we? Yeah, sorry, Mark.
Sorry, I'm just frantically looking on the website now, because the ones that Doug's on about, the ones that are in the curb itself and it flows under the pavement, some of those are the responsibility of the landowner, especially on rural roads. The landowner is responsible from the water from the side of the curb inwards. I'm just looking now to see if it's the same in. I don't think it is, but I'm just trying to look to see if it's the same in other streets as well.
I mean, I think Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Doug's referring to Wood Street, of course, where I don't think any of the land actually abuts the road.
Yes, it's all on highway land with private properties behind. If I can just add a point, Stamford Road had these in the curb ones dealt with, I think I'm right in saying, in the autumn.
Yeah, it is the Highways Authority. It's their responsibility. I
would have thought that these had the same status. Obviously, I don't have any special knowledge on the subject.
Okay. So how can we further this? Should we ask Anita to contact?
It's a matter of
the Highways Authority.
Yeah, ask Anita if you can email put it on Street Doctor and let Victoria know.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Anita. Obviously making that delineation that Doug had, because again, what we don't want is to come back a third time, of course,
and
then saying, "Oh, well,
all right."
We've got a chitty here that says that we did it." So if you don't mind, Anita, if you just make that distinction that we know about the kind of lateral drains, but it's the ones embedded and they were, informally inspected afterwards, and clearly that they were found wanting. So if you could send that
with the ironwork in the curb.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
No. Thank you, Doug, for bringing that to our attention. It's much appreciated. Right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Doug. David Lamasney joining us. David, do you have any questions or anything for us? You are on mute, sir.
Hello. No, I don't. I'm just sort of observing at the moment.
Absolutely fine, sir.
Chairman, I do have one. I've had an email from one member of the village. Can I just read it to you? I have sent it to everybody, but it is unclear from KBC's website whether the additional drawing, this is the drawing about the Newton Caravan site, is submitted in response to any comments by statutory consultees or other council officers. KBC, unlike other authorities in Northants and most of the country, doesn't put comments from statutory consultees on their website. So we have no idea what comments have been sent in by highways, county archaeological advisor, environmental advisors, etc. This is certainly not transparent. Has the parish council seen any consultee responses, or can you ask the planning officer to see them?
Well, certainly not been sent to us. To Claire or Mark or even Peter. Oh, Peter, sorry, you got your hand up.
Yeah, perhaps David didn't get a chance to look at. I did respond to that email just before the meeting, and it says I flagged on an email I dropped to him on Thursday when I first was highlighting the fact they put a new drawing on there, or they'd modified the drawing. The note on the drawing does say following requirement by the landscaping consultants. So it's not a technical consultant; it's their own landscaping consultants, and they've dropped the shielding banks from 4 meters high to 3 meters high, and they've also altered the angle of them so they're a lot less steep. So I believe that it was seen as could be cost savings. Obviously, they're significantly reducing the amount of soil that needs to be moved, and it could also be from the point of view of stability. But it isn't a consultee's requirement. And also, Claire and myself attended the planning nuts and bolt course on Tuesday of last week, and I did flag the same question there about visibility on consultees, and the trainer on that course was aware that a number of planning authorities don't update their sites to show consultees' response, and he did suggest that we anytime that we needed to see it, we get in touch with the the planning officer in charge of that particular case and ask for sight of it, and make the point that if we keep having to ask for the site of this, why don't you put them on the site anyway? But no, your David's residents' comments there are absolutely valid. They don't put consultees' comments on there, so we just have to ask for them.
Okay. So do we have an action emanating from that, or is there an implied action that the resident would like us to do?
Can we ask Kettering Borough Council why they prefer not to be transparent?
Well, some applications have got them on, some haven't. But they're all published if they go to committee or they're on requested, and it'll change in 4 weeks and 3 weeks time anyway.
So with respect to that specific one,
that's the point, Mark. If it's going to change in 3 weeks' time, can we get can they start being a bit more open going forward? Otherwise, you know as well as I do, if it's custom and practice that they've always done, they'll always do it. This is a good chance to reform themselves.
They're not going to change in the next 3 weeks. So I suggest that with this specific planning application that you do, David, as the parish councillor for Newton, could contact them. The resident could contact them, or Anita could contact them as the parish clerk. But we do need to speak to if we believe there's need to see anything else, we do need to speak to the planning officer.
So, David, are you happy to contact them? Would you like Anita to contact them and ask the question?
Well, I certainly can't do it this week. I am absolutely snowed under in Zoom meetings of one sort or another. So if you could do it, Anita, I'd appreciate it.
That's fine.
Yeah. Thanks, Anita. If you get that over to David and to all of us, that would be helpful. Thank you. Okay. Right. In that case, I know we've had quite a lot of correspondence as well. So I think anything else will be picked up in correspondence or in any of the other items. Thank you. Right. In that case, let's move to item 3, which is minutes of the last meeting. And obviously there were 2. We had our main meeting and we had an extraordinary meeting in February as well. So for those who attended the main meeting, in terms of approving those minutes, are there any observations or corrections or challenges to those minutes? Oh, very good. In that case, I'll propose then that we accept those minutes as circulated. And that's seconded by Peter, Anita. All those in favour of approving those minutes? Thank you. Against? Abstain? 1 abstention. Thank you very much. In that case, let's move to matters arising, and I shall attempt to share my screen so we can keep in touch. Okay. Right. I've just got the hang of this. Right. So in terms of actions and matters arising from that main meeting, then my colours are on here just to make sure I hopefully don't overlook anything. Please shout up, because again on the screen I can only see 3 people at any time. Please shout up. Action 1, excuse me. This I think we're going to touch upon later. Yes, and obviously we're going to propose and vote upon that a little bit later in the meeting, which is when we have the next, or the in-person one in May. Action 2 was to correct any errors in the previous draft minutes, and you have recirculated those, Anita, I think.
Yeah.
That I've seen. Okay. I picked up just a couple of things that flowed over. Some was the 2020 measurements in the bund. Mark, I think you're going to forward those to.
I've given Clive everything I've got.
Okay. Right. Okay. All right. I'm sure we'll hear from Clive if he needs anything or would like anything else.
Although Anita did apologise or convey it with apologies, we have heard from Clive and Richard, and they say that the information doesn't include any measurements. It states that the pins needed revealing.
Okay, and again, we'll have to cover that in our item on the flooding a little bit later. Okay. So, and then again, just a little bit more the Grange Road, Skeffington Road junction. I just noticed there, resident suggested a solution that does not involve KBC land, which he's exploring. I take it that resident has that resident furthered that at all? Do we know?
It wasn't a resident. It was me,
Ah, okay.
and I haven't done any more with it.
Okay.
Too busy.
Again, I don't know if this is a duplication in terms of no, it's not, it's the extraordinary meeting. So again, it's just to circulate, correct the errors and recirculate those draft minutes from the extra meeting held in January. In terms of, in terms of article about vacant role for the police liaison representative, I was too late to get it into the newsletter, but no doubt with Paul's boot behind me, I'll get that into the next edition. Post office to the March agenda. We're also going to talk about the playground in this agenda as well, and we'll get an update from Peter around the cricket pitch. Anita, how did you get on with Barclays? I know that's a bit of a labour, isn't it?
Well, yes, I got back to them. They are going to send me a letter out. The relationship manager is going to send me a letter out, but it'll basically state what we know. The person I spoke to on the phone said that, yeah, you know, I can see what's on your mandate, but the clerk does have to be on the bank mandate as well, because you have to be in order to put a payment request on the system with online banking. But I said, can it not be worded differently on the mandate, so it's still only 2 of the 3 councillors that can, you know, authorise the release of the payment? But no, you can't do that. So so I've got her to put all of what she was saying in writing, but I haven't got the letter yet.
Okay.
So basically, we're still in the same situation. So
yeah, we're making do. We're not, I don't think there's any delays on things. It's not where we want to be. So I suggest when we get that letter, Anita, then we get that on the April agenda to then make a decision about whether we stick with Barclays or we move the account.
Yeah.
Just for clarification on that, then it was flagged that therefore, since we were in we weren't in line with our own standing orders, that we would have to be carrying on using checks. And so has that been reintroduced?
Well, yeah, it has,
Yeah,
because literally within a day or two, Anita promptly went round to Mark's, did it the old-fashioned way. Mark brought them round to me. I took them back to it, signed it back to Anita. So we just did it the old-fashioned way, Peter. Sorry.
Good. And I trust quill pens were used.
Absolutely. A long bright feather was on
Kind of good.
So yeah, so look, we've just gone back to the way we did it. It's not ideal, but again, I think we'll await that letter and then get this on the April agenda if we wish to make a change. Okay. So yes, obviously, in terms of this planning application, obviously we then discuss that in the extraordinary meeting. I know, Anita, I think you've actioned the letter back to John and Beryl, thanking them, obviously, and I've seen obviously your letter on that.
Yeah, John actually only got back to me late after, well, when he sent his apologies in. So I'll make sure I deliver it by hand tomorrow. I've already sent them a holding letter, you know,
Okay.
another holding letter, you know, apologising for the late reply. So and yeah, I'll make sure that I can finish it off now and post it tomorrow.
Okay.
It was just one small amendment of wording that he wanted to see.
Yes, please, Anita. Thank you. Let's make sure we get back to John and Beryl. Okay, thank you. And moving on. So, there's just some work around the parish plan there. I'm not sure if, obviously, we can't check with John. He's not here. I'm not sure if John did that exercise at all. If anyone knows. Okay. All right, that's fine. I'm not entirely sure it was pressing for this meeting anyway, but certainly for May, for when we have a new term. Was there any more? No, there wasn't. Right. In that case, I will move to. I'll stop sharing. Right. Going back to our agenda then. So now it's approval of the extraordinary planning meeting draft minutes held 25th of February, and that must have been a pleasant record for one of our meetings. It wasn't very long at all. So has anyone any objection or views or notes on those minutes? No, fine. In that case, can I propose that we accept those minutes as a true and accurate record? Yeah, and seconded by Peter again. All those in favour that we accept those minutes? Thank you, and thanks again to all you to all the councillors who turned up for that. Again, I really do appreciate the work you're putting in.
I abstained from that one, Chair, being so wasn't there.
Yes, sorry. If we can just note Mark's abstention, please, Anita. Right,
Okay.
just screen share again in case there was any actions from it. I don't even believe there was. Well, I'm getting the hang of this now. Okay, and we obviously met. We discussed the two applications, went through, and Anita, I assume you've obviously passed our thoughts on.
Yeah.
And done the return. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Splendid. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. Right, going back to the agenda then. Right, so as I said, just kind of using emergency power, so to speak, we do need to discuss the consultation that was obviously on the yellow lines on Queen Street and Bridge Street, where the notices appeared a few days ago, which Peter quite properly put onto Facebook to flag up to everybody. And obviously, that wasn't an agenda item, but we can deal with this as an emergency item. And I think it's probably just worth a quick recap. An application for a review of sorts was sent a few months ago to the relevant authority, pointing out that we had an issue with cars parked erroneously on one side of Bridge Street and one side of Queen Street. That then went a little bit quiet. Then all of a sudden we were sent a map and a document to say, well, here's what your yellow lines look like on both sides of those streets. Again, Bridge Street going up to the cross, Queen Street only going so far as to probably the chapel, certainly not as far as the post, beyond the post office. We obviously didn't like that. That doesn't meet our needs, doesn't meet the residents' needs whatsoever. We responded. I think Anita's just remind everybody by circulating our response, which I think was very succinct, very to the point, pointed out the problems. We took the opportunity to say, well, look, here's your map, remarked up. We know residents, all of us are fed up with erroneous parking going on Bridge Street on the east side and on Queen Street, where the notice board is, etc. And actually, here's where we could do with yellow lines, but we need to preserve residents' parking. And that went off. We did, of course, mention we'd like a further review of further up Queen Street, but it was not on their plan, so we couldn't mark anything. Went quiet again for a couple of months. And then, of course, as I opened with saying, the notice arrived saying, well, this is what we're doing. What do you think? I think we've all seen the comments on Facebook. I think a few of us have contributed to it. Quite clearly, that doesn't meet the needs of the village. It doesn't meet the needs of residents. There has been a wealth of complaints. Looking at correspondence, 30 written objections over the weekend went in, apparently 2 actually in support of it. That's fine, everyone's entitled to their opinion. And obviously what I wanted to talk about tonight fairly quickly was, well, what can we do now to reinforce our initial objection and help protect these residents? But Peter, I think, fortunately, I think some correspondence has been in which indicates this mercifully has gone a little bit further. Could you pick up the mantle, please?
Certainly. I've been liaising with Sarah Brown, who's the principal TRO and parking officer from Highways, and she's confirmed, yeah, they had 30 objections. I made it clear that the parish council had objected to the proposal when it was originally put to us, and I did clarify that yes, they had received it. So, as you've already outlined, Anita did very clearly in the last couple of days circulate a copy of her correspondence with Highways, and it was seen by Highways. It was recorded. Quite why they totally ignored it, Sarah Brown wasn't in a position to say. However, they did proceed with the proposal the way that they had mapped it out, because of the level of objection from the parish council, from residents, and I understand Mark, as the borough councillor, and Victoria, as the county councillor, have also been making protestations. We've been given two options. If the parish council is minded that we don't wish to go forward with the planning application, we can ask for it to be withdrawn, and it will be withdrawn. It's still, because the system is such that they can residents can still email in with objections, and they would still be logged and responded to, but the response would be that the application has been withdrawn. The second alternative that she gave us was that we could look at a modification to that plan that was put before us, somewhat along the lines of what we've discussed. They can reduce during consultation the amount of yellow lines, but they can't increase it. So they could not add on the pinch point that we wanted to be added on, but they could remove other areas. But that obviously is recognising the vagaries of how these things can be organised. That could, I have reservations how smoothly that would go. My suggestion, and we need to, whether we can vote on an emergency item, you'll clarify. But I believe that since there has been such a level of response from residents, I believe that we should enter a period of consultation with the residents, because there is, even in the way that we'd marked up the drawing, it would display some parking, particularly that parking on the corner nearest to the cross. And that may in itself not be what the residents want. So I personally believe that we should ask Highways to withdraw this application, this proposal, and do our own consultation with our own residents, and then come back in next year when we could come in with a proposal that does meet the village's requirements, the residents' requirements, and it would be able to add in the pinch point.
Peter, thank you very much. Mark, and then I just want to go around everybody. Mark.
Yeah, fully agree with what Peter's just said. I was going to propose that as well. Both, as you said, both myself and Victoria spoke to the portfolio holder for Highways and expressed our shock that it had appeared in the first place. He replied this morning to say that he couldn't, because it had started the consultation, he couldn't get it removed, but did suggest that everybody, because so many people had already objected, if people want to object, keep them going. It's highly unlikely that it would go any further because of the level of objections anyway. So I'd say, yeah, ask for this to be withdrawn, and then we look at it again and look at markings for next year's sign off.
That would, if we were to go that way, it would also, if we are to take a vote on it, either myself or Anita would need to convey it to Sarah, because then she can use that as her response to the objections she's already had. They allow themselves 5 days to do the response. She hasn't responded to the ones that obviously this morning was the first time she actually saw them. They haven't responded yet, but if we tell them that we require it to be withdrawn, they will withdraw it, and then that would be the response that all the objectors would get.
Any other councillors have a view on this? As Peter and Mark have said, we're effectively being given, we're kind of being given a choice. The first is the easy one, the clean one, is kill it dead, okay, and go, and then we can just come back with another plan or another suggestion after we've talked to residents, consulted, and of course, and this is the clincher, could include the pinch point on Queen Street or a wider area. Or we we continue, we sustain the objection that we've had, and they listen and they amend the plans to what we suggested, which was to only yellow line one side, keep the residents parking, which has the potential benefit of getting in much quicker, but it may not in reality. So that's the kind of quandary. And obviously 2 councillors already have said a very sensible view, which is we should probably just kill this dead, get everybody breathing, and then look at this a little bit later in the year when we have a new council convened, and we'll do this properly. I'm eager to hear from any other councillors. David Watson, I think you had a hand.
Yeah, my initial thought, Chairman, was that it'd be easier just to have taken out the bits that we don't like. Okay, the pinch point will be another year away before it gets lined, but at least we'd have stopped a lot of the nonsense that was going on last summer. My concern, obviously, is that if we withdraw it now, how long is it going to take us to get it back on the agenda? We know from other places around the village where we've wanted yellow lining, it's taken years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard balance, but I think balancing again is just their total incompetence, which we've seen before. We'd probably better to start again, because once you start playing with it, they made a mess of what was simple. They'll make a bloody sight bigger mess than of what's more complicated.
Okay, thank you. Paul, I'm anxious to hear from you. I mean, obviously you are a resident of Bridge Street, and again, so I'm going to kind of pose the same question, because you may have a view on this, because it's not you selfishly, but on behalf of your local residents, do we kill it dead so there's zero risk to you being able to park, or your local residents, or do we put in, or do we try and reinforce our objection? They take out the yellow lines where there's residents parking. Of course, as David says, I don't know if I can put it so eloquently, but there might be a further mistake, and it slipped back in again. Obviously the first one is cleaner, but it also means you certainly wouldn't have any restrictions on the road by the time this summer comes. And again, your local residents will know what that means if the Ford is just as popular. Slightly double-edged sword. What's your take? What are your neighbours saying?
I mean, I think the general thought is, obviously with the additional parking signage going up for the village hall, that would have a positive impact on the way people parked anyway. I think it's incredibly important. Yes, obviously the parking it was 1 or 2 individuals who parked inappropriately on the other side of the street when there was a full lineup of cars on the housing side of the street. So I think, and bearing in mind that my opinion is the pinch point at Queen Street is a bigger issue than some of the other problems. So I think just do it all in one go and get it right first time. If that means waiting 12 months, then it means waiting 12 months.
Clean slate, calm everybody down. It seems to be the right thing to do. Dave Rushton.
Yeah, see, what I'm thinking is, what is the risk of, obviously, if we didn't object to it, because I'm all in favour of just cleaning this out, get it sort of thing. What I'm concerned about is if we did decide to go through and have some of these yellow lines put in, what would be the thing is, well, we've had a review, you've got to wait a few years, or is that not how they roll with things? Because obviously also as well, what I'd be concerned about would be the communication, like David Watson said, that sometimes they could make a mess out of such a simple job, and we end up getting something in there that's going to be very difficult to remove. So that's basically my view on that, if that makes sense. But what would the implications be?
I couldn't answer that, but yeah, again, you're right to be wary. Obviously, Peter, I'll let you come back in a second. But yeah, I think, look, it obviously takes X months from approved application to put it in, whatever X months is. But obviously, that then, if we decide to go with a clean slate, which is really what the view seems to be, then that pushes that back. However, better then that we initiate it as a parish council with signed off plans after we've consulted with everybody, and not just know or think we're doing the right thing. Then that way it's foolproof.
Because I think, if rightly, it took about 3 years to get the lines by the school, if I remember rightly. Because I remember that, because I'm kicking up about Newton Road.
Yeah. In all fairness, I think it is happening a little bit quicker. Okay, sorry. Peter, then Paul.
Yeah, just to address David's point there, it is an annual process. It happens this time of the year, every year. So if we do withdraw from this, we'll be having the full review of a new set of plans exactly in 12 months' time. That's why this is termed the Kettering 2021 review. It happens annually. And just something that I think we shouldn't overlook, that parking causing obstructions and dangerous parking is already a reportable offence. And the Kettering Borough Council site, since the decriminalisation of parking, clarifies what their wardens will address and what is a police matter. And they clearly say on their own site that obstructions in areas with no painted lines that indicate what waiting restrictions are, or obstructions or parking causing blockages should be reported to the police, and they say on 101. Now, I think we've had mixed levels of response, and I believe that what we should do is, if we are concerned that next year is going to be or this year rather, is going to be as bad as last year was, obviously the lockdown situation is going to be somewhat changed, but I think we should make sure that we have a mechanism whereby we do take these things up with the police, and through Mark as the Borough Councillor and Victoria as the County Councillor and David on Rural Forum or anything else like that, we make sure that we are getting close with the police and say, look, if we flag that there is a problem, we do need some level of response.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point, Paul. All is not lost, you know. And as you think you've said, it's not like it's a huge damning problem every day. It is a nuisance when it happens. But what Peter's emphasising is, but there are other recourses for us as a parish council, for local residents as well. So that's fair enough.
And I think that I echo those sentiments, and I think that's where we need to get it right, because I think the way a handful of individuals parked, double yellow lines aren't going to make any difference to them.
If they're going to park like that, they're not even going to notice yellow lines.
No.
Okay. I think we can draw this to a safe conclusion. So, Claire, any view on this before we move to our action? Or Terry as well, sorry.
I agree that we should be just knocking this on the head for now and doing this all properly and talking to everybody. It all seemed a bit rushed in the first place, really.
Yeah. It's a good point, Claire. I think what we did is we tried to not look a gift horse in the mouth. We thought, oh, that's wrong, but this could be right. And well, we won't make that mistake again, as however well intentioned it was. Terry, any postscript from yourself on this?
I agree. I think throw it out for the moment. Make sure we get it right next time. Consultation with the neighbours, with the residents, can't be a bad thing, really.
Okay. So
in the longer term, I apologise, Nick, but in the longer term, we can also then look at residents parking, because that was one of the suggestions that a lot of the residents were making on Facebook. And obviously it's a totally different scheme, but it's something that we could bear in mind as the bigger picture.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So well, yeah, I think there's kind of two things that then we can vote on. The first is the definitive action to knock this on the head, and the second is a suggestion that we put this as a formal, let's say, a point on the June agenda, to then set up a working party or a consultation looking at yellow lines, residents parking in that centre of the village. And that way we've got plenty of time to consult, plenty of time to author plans, plenty of time to get any application in. That I'm just suggesting that it might be one of our actions. And the other, of course, is to knock this on the head. How would we do that? Is that yourself, Peter, or Anita, sending that in writing and asking for
I'm already in correspondence with them, and it's not yet, provided we agree at the council meeting that I can convey that as a message, then she's actually, has said, I look forward to hearing from you tomorrow. So it's all set up.
Splendid.
So I no problem to speak to them.
In that case, can I make the proposal then, which is in two parts. The first is that Peter will respond formally to Sarah at the Highways Agency, confirming that the parish council would like to withdraw, make sure that application is withdrawn.
We'd like them to withdraw.
Or we'd like them to withdraw, obviously, that proposal, that application. And secondly, that we pick this up in June as a formal item to form a working party to look at this area, consult with local residents, speak to the new unitary, to to try and come up with a scheme that best as possible suits everybody, but it's going to be distinctly a fresh application, a fresh scheme. That's my proposal. Mark?
I think we're seconding.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll second that.
second. All those in favour of that proposal? Okay, thank you. It would seem that's unanimous, Anita.
Okay. So that was yourself. That was yourself that would propose it, right? Okay. Yeah.
It was, and with Mark
seconding.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, obviously, Peter, I know how diligent you are, but as soon as you get that formal response from them, it's going to be withdrawn. It would be good to know that, and we'll obviously want to get that on Facebook to residents as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for accommodating that emergency item. It was the right thing to do. Thank you. Right. Shall we move to item 4, finance, please? Anita, over to you, and I'll give my tongue a rest.
Yeah, the balance statements are circulated as at the 17th February, £45,199.14. The business saver account, £10,779.94. I've listed the payments. Do you want me to read them out? It's been circulated to everybody.
Has everyone had an opportunity to read those payments?
I'm just thinking it would save a couple of minutes. That was all.
That's brilliant, Anita. We're all after a couple of minutes tonight, so that's fine. If everyone's read it, that's great. Thank you.
Right. Can I just add one thing in with the last payment that's listed, which is the Northants Calc payment for £114. We are still having to pay for 3 people who wanted to apply, who wanted to attend the training session, even though apparently only 2 people could make it. But you have to cancel within a certain period of time. So if that didn't happen, we do still have to pay for it. I just wanted that clarified.
You say clarified. I mean, I did see that was in their terms. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, but I didn't know whether there might be a query. Why was it £114?
Okay.
If only 2 people attended. So I just wanted it recording that we are still having to pay it for that.
Okay.
The absent person.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Right, we've all seen those bills that need paying. Do I have a proposer, a seconder? Peter will propose that we make those payments, and Terry's seconding. All those in favour that we make those payments are circulated and shown. Object? Abstain? Thank you. Thank you very much, Anita.
Okay.
Right, and that's it. Right, in that case, item 5, planning.
Right, we don't have any decision notices at present, so that's that bit out of the way. We've got the 2 planning applications to look at. I don't know what you want to look at first. Depends when you're going to be leaving, Nick. Are you going to be leaving or are you staying?
I will. I'm happy to be thrown out. I shall go and get myself a drink and come back.
Okay.
It's the Handsworth way.
Do Nick first, and then I'll move them out.
Okay. Nick, sorry,
Yes?
did you say?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I will.
So he's in the waiting room.
Okay. I'm sharing my screen. I don't know if you can see it. Nothing's happening.
So when you went to open, you're definitely right there.
Come on, work. Right, anyway, I'll tell you. So Nick's property, number 1 West Street, and the proposal is for retention of secondary glazing to the first floor windows. So that's like an internal sort of double glazing. It's been there prior to 2005, so this is a retrospective application put there. This glazing was installed by previous owners. It is a listed building, grade 2, and it is in the conservation area. Let's see if I can get anything to come up. Right, okay, so this just shows you a sort of quick look at where the secondary glazing sits, and that's inside of the window. It can't be viewed.
We were all notified that this planning application was on the agenda, so we've all had the opportunity to look at it. And certainly having looked at it, I see it as totally inconsequential. I can't see it's any detriment to anybody, so
there's no detriment to the grading of the property. I don't think it's damaging the property. It can't be seen. I would propose that we don't object to this. It's
right. Seconded.
All those in favour? I can't see everybody.
Maybe you need to ask anybody that rejects to shout.
The only hands I can't see are David and Paul's.
I approve. Double glazing. Yeah.
That's everyone except me, and I'll object.
You'll object.
No, sorry, not object. I will abstain as always. Sorry.
And the next one, if I can try and get it up. Here we go.
I'll just let Nick come back.
Okay. Yeah. Might be better.
We're telling
someone in charge.
We're telling the bad news.
Yeah, whatever.
Right, okay, I'll move on to the next one, which is 26 Queen Street, and they are replacing wood windows with UPVC windows with a grey wood effect to match the existing, and this is in the conservation area. So it's just here, number 26, set back off the road at Queen Street. Let me see if I can show you the windows. That's what they'll look like.
There, you'll need to unshare this screen and share your PDF files.
Sorry?
You need to stop sharing your screen and then share the PDF files. We can't see them at the moment.
All we see is a list.
Right, I'll try again. I'll be so glad to go back to normal meetings.
I've enjoyed
Someone
this.
else does the technology.
Oh, I love it. It's great. Home comforts.
Can you see it?
You've started screen sharing. It's going to come. Here it is.
Lovely.
Right. So this is what the windows will look like. Very similar to what they already look like. I'm going to have to try it again. I'm going to try and show you the doors, but the doors are going to be in a similar UPVC and similar to what's already there. It's just another picture of doors. No.
Claire, I don't know whether you can hear me because I can't see myself, but I can't see any of this.
I can't seem to get it to work anyway.
No,
Okay.
you've missed nothing. Okay, if I could, okay.
I'm still trying to just show you the doors.
Okay.
But I don't know whether it's even that urgent.
Well, again, it wasn't an agenda item. We did have the opportunity of looking at it. this is the replacement of replacement windows, because the wooden ones were only put in 2 years ago when they did the refurbishment of the property. And the style of windows is very similar to replacement windows that have been used in other areas of the conservation area.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't see any objection.
No, I propose we don't object. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Do you want to stop sharing next, Claire? Then we'll see everyone. Sorry.
Okay.
My arm's aching.
Sorry, who proposed, who seconded? So Claire, you're proposing, Peter seconding. Right. All those in favour of no objection.
I'm still seeing scheduling made easy. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I just got something. What's happening? Yeah, we're back in business.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. So the proposal, which was seconded, was no objection to that last application. All those in favour of no objection.
Yeah.
Okay. Against or not agreeing with that? Abstention? Abstain? 1. Thank you.
That's it.
Wasn't there one for Little Oakley, Claire?
Well, there's been an amendment, but it's I had a quick look at it. It was parking. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's anything different, but they've just provided additional details of how the cars can turn around in the area.
So that's just in relation to the site which we all talked about before.
Yeah, the site that we objected to, but we didn't object on the parking grounds anyway.
No.
Our objections were on other things that haven't been.
That's fine. Yeah,
so.
I just saw it on your.
Yes, I was looking at it.
But I hadn't seen it anywhere else in the paperwork.
Yeah, no, I didn't get any notification for it either, so I just had having a nosy. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I'm done now.
Oh, great, thank you.
I've got one more thing for planning.
Yeah.
That's quite fundamental, because the 16th of March sees the last planning meeting for KBC. As from April the 1st, it's Northants Unitary taking over, and they have a new set of rules. And one major change is that it's no longer just one objection that forces it to committee. It's now 3. And that will include any in-flight applications. So any application that has up till April the 1st only had one objection, that if it's only got one objection, it won't go to committee anymore. It will be determined by officers. It's only moving forward after April the 1st. If it's got 3 objections or more, it'll go to committee, just so everybody's aware.
Is that entities or people, or or people like us? How is that exactly? Is it just 3 objections in general?
3 objections.
So sorry, Mark, is that effectively giving the officers will get more mandate, that they'll effectively be?
Yeah, they can determine applications that have got up to 3 objections on them.
Right.
Yeah.
Terry.
Presumably then that would mean if we as a council wanted to object, that would be 1 objection.
Yes.
So we ought to object as individuals if we want to make it relevant. In other words, just the council objecting may not be sufficient, but 3 or more councillors individually objecting would.
If those councillors are, if they're consultees, I think, Terry, for instance, right. Yeah, if you just have one of us or 2 of us happen to be a consultee, and it is probably very rare that more than one of us would be. You'd
have to have a planning. It has to be a planning consideration as well. You can't just say it'll ruin my view. That won't count. And the other thing to bear in mind is there are no anticipated planning meetings until after the elections, and probably until June. So March the 16th will be the last one until possibly June, unless there's something major comes up. That's it from me.
Mark. Thanks, Mark. Any more on planning? you. In that case, let's move to item 6, which is dates to be decided for the parish meeting, annual meeting, and normal monthly May meeting, to be held on the same day or separately, to be discussed and formally proposed and voted upon. And of course, that's in relation to the election, which is being held on the 6th of May, unless I've got that wrong, which, as I think we said, was actually on the day of, was actually on a Monday, wasn't it? Or was it just, it was uncomfortably just before. So, and the results may not even be known yet. So we could theoretically be having a meeting on the Monday where new councillors have only been voted on the previous Thursday, and that fact may not even be known to them yet. So I think the discussion was, and it is linked with item B, which is that meeting in person, and actually do we have all 3 meetings at once? I think we said we'd discuss it at this meeting. Monday the 17th of May sounded sensible, which because it gave breathing space away from the election and the result. So yeah, I suppose that's the first question, is should we aim to have the monthly meeting then? Should we conjoin that with the AGM, and then should we conjoin that with the parish meeting? Mark?
Yeah, I think we should do all, as we've done for the last few years, do them all 3 together. But provision, obviously we can't say it's going to be a face-to-face because we won't know until probably 2 weeks beforehand whether the next step in coming out of lockdown will be approved or not. So I think we just put the dates in, and then we've got 3 days before, 3 working days beforehand to announce whether it's Zoom or face-to-face.
Yeah. The current and the bang up to date guidance from Northants Acre to Brian Leaton with the village hall is that at the moment he should be able to reopen for business on Monday the 17th of May.
But with respect, Acre aren't the legal power for it.
No, I get that. But what I'm saying is that if nothing else changed, and I do appreciate we wouldn't be announcing it until 2 weeks before. If nothing else changed, it is likely that we could actually convene that in person. And it's all right when you're doing this meeting, an AGM, okay, but when you're having a parish meeting, it's probably worth waiting that extra week or 2 to get a more fine or a more likely chance that you can do it in person. Bear in mind, everyone was starved of one last year. But I'm just making the point that if 17th of May, is fine with everyone. At the moment, that's on the trajectory to be in person anyway.
I suggest we go the way that Mark's mapped it out, that we do provisionally say that we can have those meetings, and then we've got 3 days before to do the confirmation and the sending out of agendas.
Yeah.
And if needs be, we can cancel the village meeting and just have it later in the year.
Okay. Does anybody have any opposing view to that or a counter opinion? Is that a formal proposal and seconding, Mark and Peter, then? Yeah. Of all 3 of those on the 17th of May, in person if we can. Seconded by Peter. All those in favour? Against? Abstain? Thank you very much. Right, item 7. We do have a lot of correspondence, and I may have to check after we've been through what's been formally listed in case we had anything more that had been circulated. It may be, some may have to fall to another time. The first one is 7A, underused publicly held land, and any response needs to be submitted by 13th of March. So sorry, Anita, there's quite a bit happening in the short term. Did everybody read that short but sweet communication?
Yeah.
I mean, it pretty much is what it says on the tin. Does anybody have any idea of further implication of that, Mark, or anyone? I mean, it is what it says it is, isn't it?
Yeah. My response to that was that I'm not aware of any underused publicly held land, so I don't have anything to put forward on it, unless anybody else does.
No. And I don't think we're worried either. At the end of the day, the big piece of land that we own is the Stone Pit land. It's, out of COVID, it's used quite thoroughly by the youth club and other parties, fire brigade, scouting.
I don't think it qualifies underused.
No, it's not underused at all, is it? It's all used. So
Yeah, the only other piece would be the green outside the church.
Again, it is a village green, so it's used as a village green, and people can sit on the grass.
Green, so.
Yeah, designated village green. Okay. So I'm just going to assume, Anita, we got a nil return to that basically, or if you get time, I think just a one-liner to say no, we've reviewed it, we don't have any, thank you. I think that just avoids somebody coming along going, oh, we never heard from Geddington. Oh, what we got? I think probably best that we do at least just send a one-liner, if you don't mind, please. Right, Village Hall restrictions, COVID-19 update, reopening of playgrounds and outdoor gyms. Email from Brian Leaton sent 8th of February. So again, there was some guidance there. I don't know if you all read that. I'm trying to work out what, if anything, the parish council would need to do. Peter, you might be able to help me with that.
No, I mean, the reopening of the playgrounds, Kettering Borough Council already put the signage up about the limitation on use, and that was effective from the 4th of January. Outdoor gyms were opened on the 28th of January, but we don't have an outdoor gym. But there were certain conditions for opening them if you had them. And we've just discussed the Village Hall restrictions that we believe may be relaxed on the 17th of May, but that's subject to final release by Mr. Johnson.
Fine.
So I think we note it, but it's I don't see there's any action for us.
No, I mean it might be helpful down the track when we know 100% for certain that things are happening. One of us might go on Facebook and say, guess what? KBC have said this will be open to next week or whatever, but I don't think there's any action on us, is there?
I suppose that it may well be at some stage in the future they come and put back the swings that they cut off when we first went into lockdown.
Well, that'd be nice. Right, in that case, item 7. Sorry, Dave Rushton.
Yeah, just one thing is because obviously before we had when this first outbreak, when it first happened, we had like a couple of signs up and bits and pieces just to like warn people of it. Do you think that's necessary, or do you think everyone's just sick to death of it now?
Well, the signs are still there.
They're still there? Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
And I think there is a prescribed sign, Dave, as well, which KBC or someone put on. I don't think it. And again, as Peter says, it doesn't affect us. Okay, I'll go to 7C then, and this was we got quite a lengthy letter from a resident of Little Oakley regarding the damaged wall, and he feels that that situation wasn't conveyed accurately. I'm not sure if we've all had time to read that. There's a kind of a shorter way and a longer way of dealing with this. I'm anxious for the sake of everybody in general and all the residents and all the business we have to get through, that we don't go through this piecemeal. I'm not sure how helpful that would be. Needless to say, the resident feels that it wasn't communicated correctly. Terry, what's the right thing here? How can we go about this the right way? Support the resident if he needs it. What can we do here?
Well, obviously, I have inadvertently given some offence to Mr. and Mrs. Summerley, which I regret, because I've known them for a long time and actually went to their wedding reception. So I regret that. All I can do, I think, is to tell you what my recollection of the conversation which I had with Mrs. Summerley was. And that was, as I recall, I was walking through the village and spoke to her almost over the garden fence type of conversation. As I say, this is all from memory, and the conversation, which was fairly brief, took place sometime in 2019, I believe. And I asked her what the situation was, and she said that Boughton had scheduled for it to be done the previous summer, which would fit in with the letter which says it was originally knocked down in April 2018. So I offered to bring the matter up with Boughton Estates, and I was asked not to. And that's really all I can recall. I think somewhere in the letter it says that people in the village haven't complained about it. Well, they may not have complained about it to them, but comment has been made to me. And those of you who've seen it will know it's a bit of an eyesore. On a positive note, when Mark and I had a meeting with Sam, the new manager at Boughton, he said they were in discussions and gave the impression that it was going to be dealt with in the relatively near future, along with some other walls that need to be repaired in the village. And that's what Sam, he volunteered that. I didn't raise the question of any other walls. So I suppose all I can say is that I'm sorry if I've conveyed the wrong impression, and I certainly wasn't expecting a reaction to the extent that it has occurred. And obviously I regret any offence that I've inadvertently caused to them. It did cross my mind to reply directly, but I thought that wasn't appropriate because the letter had gone to the council. So I think I'm now in the hands of the council as to what they feel is appropriate in the circumstances.
David, you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, this has the potential of spending an awful lot of time. I don't think the letter takes us any further forward. I would suggest that Terry just has a word with them, apologise, explain that he was just trying to do the best, and leave it. Well, I don't think there's anything else we can do. It sounds as if Boughton's got it in hand. I suggest we move on.
Any other councillor have a view on this? I am keen to. I mean, at the end of the day, if there's something, first and foremost, if there's something tangible that this parish council could and should be doing, I'd like to know if it is. I have read the letter twice, and I agree, Terry, you may wish to build some bridges. That would be, I think, appreciated. But then, in terms of us getting formally back to the author of the letter with what we should be doing, is there anything within that has been requested of us, Peter?
No, I exactly. I don't see there's a parish council role. Comments were made within the parish council meeting by Terry that this resident disagrees with and objects to, and Terry has addressed that. Terry was recounting his recollection. The resident has a different view, which he obviously is very fervent about. But I don't see it's a matter to spend much more parish council time on, other than to note the fact that we do recognise the fact that the resident has a different view of the background to that we were given before. We've read it. I've read it. I understand it. I don't see anything where they're actually asking the parish council to take any action on their behalf.
And would that be suitable for a quick note to go back from Anita? As Terry points out, the letter did come to the parish council. Does it seem sensible and be asking Anita to send a very quick note acknowledging the letter?
I think it's important
we do. Yeah, absolutely. Saying that we've spoken in this open meeting. It's not Terry's recollection. He certainly would not. He certainly regrets if he did cause offence. Sure, he'll be in touch informally down the line. And if there's anything else that you feel we could do as a parish council, it sounds like it's in hand. But if there's anything else to let us know directly, Terry or everybody, does that sound about right?
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, at the end of the day, we're human beings, and what we say could get misconstrued, or we have that slight difference of opinion. There may be items later on this agenda where that's the case. Unfortunately, we're in this role, and we're only human, and sometimes we might say things which are correct or incorrect, but we're not going to get it right all of the time. So I think that seems to be the right course of action. But yeah, Terry, I think if you were to just reach out informally,
yes,
in a week, so I think that would be helpful, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, splendid. Item 7D, elections on 6th of May, information from Heather Jackson. And I think Heather has sent some instructions through on those who wish to stand for parish councillors, and to go online where there are nomination forms. I think there's a little bit of a recommended process to try and keep that COVID secure as well, isn't there, for seconders and returning forms.
But it does say that we, despite the opportunity of doing certain things online, they still require hand delivered copies, and they suggest that one representative of a parish council, for example, delivers those nomination forms for the parish council.
So again, and forgive me, I should know this. Do the forms need to be hand delivered, or can they be posted?
Well, it does say hand delivered.
It's
But you have to do it, and it does say you have to do it by appointment.
Signed off.
Sorry, Mark.
I think you get them signed off when you deliver them. They'll check them to make sure that they're all correct.
Okay.
They do say, because of COVID, please limit yourself to one person, bring them all in, and make an appointment. Otherwise, you just have to sit and wait until they can see you.
Okay, there's a couple of things. The first is, Anita, is this normally a clerk's job? I appreciate we're in a different territory at the minute. We're in a different climate with COVID. Is that something normally the clerk does, or does the chair do it? I don't recall doing it before.
Chair, some clerks do it. It's normally the candidate who does it, but because of COVID, they're trying to get one person to volunteer to bring them all in.
I look, I'll step forward. I don't have a problem as long as someone like Anita or somebody prompts me and pushes me and reminds me. I don't mind doing it on behalf of everybody at all. Sometimes after going to Kettering, I'm not especially vulnerable. I don't mind undertaking that role. Unless anybody else wants to break out into song and do it. No? Okay, well, in that case, I'm happy to do it. I think, again, sorry, go on, please.
Sorry, Nick, I'm just going to say timescales. It does say that it's from the date of nomination, the date of notice up to the 8th of April that they need delivering by.
Okay. Right, well, in that case, I think I'll put it into my calendar that I will go there on the 6th of April. I'm not saying that everybody has to bring it to me, but if you would like it, then that just gives me another 24 hours grace and then a 24 hours emergency. But I would suggest that anybody, then I think everyone knows where I live, if you want to get me your nomination forms by 9 a.m. on the 6th of April, I will make an appointment that day to go with. Like I say, you don't have to. You can go yourself, but I'm more than happy to do that. Okay. It might be worth mentioning, though, that in the past, we've not always been great administrators. There's been some of us who certainly wish to remain as parish councillors and not always got the forms in. This year, there may be a lot more interest as parish councillors. I am toying with the idea, bear in mind we are 4 parish councillors short, to actually go on Facebook and openly invite people who wish to become parish councillors and to even advertise the link. We are 4 down, and means the rest of us have more work to do. And
if we're not too successful, we have to have an election and pay for it.
Well, again, it's yeah. Well, at the end of the day, we've got a bit, Peter. There's going to be an election, ballot boxes going on at the village hall anyway. I mean, Mark, I know Peter might be jesting, but if
we will have to pay if there's more candidates than places, then there will be an election, and you will have to contribute towards it.
Okay. And that may well as be, but I suppose we have to look at the other side of it, which is we are 4 councillors down. We do have a lot of work on. There are more and more things come out the woodwork that we need to respond to. I think the kind of subcommittees taking things away has been actually very successful. It gets a lot of things done, but we have a packed docket every single time. Well, I think we'd probably welcome some more help from.
We should advertise it, Chair. Claire wants to speak.
Claire.
I was under the impression that Anita would be sent the nomination forms. Is that right?
We already have them.
Oh, right. So
they were sent electronically.
Oh, okay.
You have to ask for paper ones.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Right. I'm not sure if we went off piece there, if that was actually the item. So, okay. So like I say, there's no action as such, but I'm just making the point that 6th of April by 9 a.m. if you get me those forms, please. And again, I'm making the point, please do it, and don't wait to be co-opted, because others may well be elected in. Okay. Right. Item 7E, model design code, end calc update, 26th of February. I must be honest, I don't know what this is. I've overlooked this.
It's gripping stuff.
Yeah.
It's talking about maybe Mark should brief us on it.
He would if he'd seen it.
Okay, all right. I'll briefly go through it. It's talking about bringing in design codes for planning areas. So, if, for example, if we as a parish wanted to have only certain bricks or only certain roof claddings or all properties with gables facing the road or wherever it might be, that's the sort of thing that would go into a design code, and creating the mechanisms.
Thanks, Peter. Sorry for that. Some of us have not read that. David.
Chairman, we do have a formal design code. It was produced about 15 years ago. And it's based on designs within the village. It was part of the original village plan.
Okay.
If it was,
I've seen them. I've seen it.
Sorry.
Yeah, Claire. Sorry, Peter. Claire was.
So just saying, yes, I've seen it in the local plans. There is details on
if it
the
formed
way
part of
property
the
should be.
if it formed part of the KBC site-specific plan when they were redoing that, then it'll still feature as a design code. But if it wasn't submitted and featured as part of that, then it essentially doesn't exist.
Am I right in thinking this really is for places like I know Rockingham, where they've got the same colour paint on all the doors and all the things, whereas in our 3 villages, whilst conservation areas and various things, that you can't really say that there has to be a certain commonality which needs to be preserved. Is that the right type of example?
The absence of our local design code doesn't mean that there isn't a design code, because there is within the site-specific plan, because that's what it did have, and we always see these comments about the materials used shall be in keeping with, and all those sort of things. So that there is the overview of designs already under planning regulations.
Claire.
Yeah, I'd just like to say as well, I mean, one of the things when I did the planning training the other day was the development of a neighbourhood plan, and that's the sort of thing we could include in that, I should think, and it might be something that we should be looking at going forward. And then we can adopt it, and it becomes a proper piece of sort of design, and for the village going forward, it makes everything a lot clearer.
It does, and actually takes priority over generic plans at borough level or at unit level.
Actually, our design code was based on this, which was produced by the Borough Council and Corby and the County Council in conjunction with, it's called the Rockingham Forest Countryside Design Summary.
How old is that?
Oh, it's a few years old.
Right. So the closing date for responses is the 27th of March then. So effectively, if we wanted to go back, we're either going to have to organise another meeting, or are we?
Can we ask John if he's got a copy of the of our version of that?
Well, okay. What do people think then, Mark?
I'm just thinking, if it was in the village plan in 2004, it's been superseded by the 2016 village plan. I'm pretty certain it wasn't in there.
Yeah.
So it's gone. But what are we being asked to let them know by the 27th of March?
Can you open it, Nick?
Yeah, sorry, I'll share the screen. I thought I was doing, sorry. So it's this. Shall I try and open it?
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, I've got to be honest, I completely overlooked that.
The way I understand it is when we were looking at that white paper that they're mentioning, they were sort of talking about producing a sort of booklet of styles that you could just pick a style and plonk it somewhere. And I think that's what it is. It's sort of them having like a manual or something for any future design, and then you just pluck it out of it. It doesn't need to go through the planning process. If this goes through this consultation, if it's all agreed on, that's what I'm assuming it is.
So would we be specifying for any of the villages what effectively some do's and don'ts and what we'd want them to look like by this, or are we commenting on their model design?
You're commenting. It's a consultation on what the new MPPF.
Okay.
But trying to look at the MPPF tonight, you ain't got time.
No.
But as Mark just pointed out there, it's consulting upon the mechanism for introducing these design codes and those sort of things as part of that planning for the future. So it's sort of cascading down from the original consultation that took place on the planning for the future white paper. It's now cascading down, saying some of the mechanisms that are necessary to be in place for that to work are these, and this is consultation on those. But it's not forming a design code. It is. So in other words, without being blunt about it, if we don't respond to it, others that are more au fait with it will have responded.
Right. Thank you, Peter. And again, I'm slightly embarrassed I didn't pick up on that. So really what this is do you want to be consulted on our way that we're going to do this, rather than you've got till the 27th of March to come up with your own?
Exactly.
That could come down the track. Right. So really there's no pressing need to do this.
No.
Does anybody feel a pressing need to be consulted with on this? Right. And we'll wait till it gets a bit closer. Okay. Thank you. Right, thank you everybody so far, because we're doing very well for time. Right, item 7F, to appoint a subcommittee to discuss the first responder support request with the coordinator and report back to the parish council. Again, cover just a little bit of background with this. So we received a letter, I don't know if it was before or just around the time of the last parish council meeting, from a first responder group based in Corby, supported by St John's Ambulance, which trained local volunteers to give them equipment, training, and train them as first responders to get there potentially before an ambulance with a portable defibrillator, and issue some first aid or even more kind of exacting medical treatment. Obviously, great bunch of people, fantastic. And we were being asked to help, could we support some funding for this? That then pretty much got superseded very quickly. There was an incident in the Chase, I think it was, where somebody they collapsed, they required some medical attention. And that kind of came to a head again. And a couple of residents flagged up the fact that they were first responders. And one resident, again, very well-meaning, of course, said that she is the first responder for the village, but needs to undertake training. So it all kind of happened at the same time. And I know I've spoken to a couple of other councillors who did get some worried phone calls and emails saying, well, how you got a first responder who've not done the training yet? And does this mean we're not going to get ambulances coming quick enough, and so on and so forth? And So quite a lot of concern. It's about the only time since I've been chair I've had people literally banging on the door, wishing to see me, saying, "We'll have the parish council sponsored this." So again, just kind of responding to lots of the concerns. We sent the lady a holding letter, the coordinator, asking for much more detail around the programme, how they make their selections, and effectively saying, this is very important, we want to support it, I'm sure, but before we take this to the parish council, we need a little bit more information. So like I say, to cut a long story short, I don't think there'd be anybody that would say that for our village or villages, we wouldn't like to have trained first responders out there. It sounds like a great thing, but there's a lot of questions that need answering: training, funding, selection, background checks. Has everybody been given a fair crack of the whip? Now, again, being conscious of time, there was half an invite to the local coordinator to come and present to us. We may feel it might more be prudent to point 2 or 3 in a group to meet virtually with the lady, get the answers to all these questions, ask a few more questions, and come back to the full council with what the situation is and what we think. Peter.
Can I ask, did we get a response to Anita's letter of the 22nd of February, which you've just alluded to, where we responded to her letter by saying, yes, okay, we've got some issues, and can you clarify this, and can you clarify? Did we get a response to that one of the 22nd of February?
We did, didn't we, Anita? And I think it was the lady said she had to go and check with the ambulance service on a number of the questions.
Yeah, and she hasn't come back after that statement. Yeah.
Because the questions that were asked within that correspondence of the 22nd were absolutely perfectly valid questions, and they really are ones that we would need to have satisfactory answers to move to the next stage. You were asking for clarification of the interlinking of various first responder groups, because this seemed to be almost a territorial war between perhaps not competing is the right word, but alternative first responder groups. And we do need that clarifying.
We do, and it's something personally, I feel quite passionate to keep close to, because this could be doing a service for the village that we don't have. B, there are at least 2 residents who do contribute to the village who are clearly very keen to get involved, which is fine. We don't want to dampen that. But as Peter says, there are then large sections of the village that say that's great, but we need answers to these, and what are the parish council doing about it? So we've got one of 2 routes. If everyone agrees that this is quite an important thing that we want to look at, potentially support, do we invite the lady to come to present to us all in full meeting, or do we want to appoint a small group to have that meeting, to ask the pertinent questions, kick the tires, and then come back to this with a kind of draft proposal for agreement? What do people think? Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Given the amount of public concern we had for it, I think it should be a full meeting where she comes along and talks about it, because then the public can watch and hear the answers instead of it going into a subgroup that would be a private meeting and then translated by the council. No disrespect to the councillors, but it's the councillors then relaying what's said, and there may be some scepticism with residents.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because it certainly does involve individual residents at the moment, and like I say, they're very, very well-meaning. But as you say, on the other hand, it's such an important topic. It is important to be transparent. David Watson.
Yeah, if we got 2 competing groups, you'd have to get both of them to come and present, and you'll need to give them a very strict time limit on their presentation. Yeah. Unless they can get together, I don't know. I think it's a recipe for a long and not very helpful discussion.
Potentially, Peter.
I just come back to the point I made. I think if we look at the correspondence, we are owed an answer to all of these questions. Without an answer to those questions, it's very difficult to say whether we would even want to offer a forum to this particular organisation. Once we've got those answers in place, then we're in a position to actually decide which way we want to go forward. I would understand Mark's
have we
concern.
asked those-
Just sorry, David, can we let Peter finish? Sorry,
Yeah.
Peter.
So I would understand Mark's concern that with the level of concerns that were voiced by residents, both on Facebook and to you personally, that it is something that if we were to have satisfactory answers to that, we should have it as part of a structured meeting, such that others do have the opportunity of viewing those responses. But I would also then endorse David's point that, God, that could go on for hours. So we would need a fairly tight time frame for it.
Yes, I mean, sorry, David, I'll let you come back in a second. But when we've tried to do these things before, to do them justice, they've taken 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And what's happened is we've then pushed out other items on the agenda. So I guess when we have a response from the lady, we can discuss briefly on email what that next step is and what it is. But I think, yes, I think you're right. A public meeting, whether it's an extraordinary one or not, potentially only because of time constraints. This is an important topic. And again, and I'm told by people who nothing to do with this organization at all, but generally blue light first responders, that it's almost an unwritten rule that if you have these in place, it could be medical, could be quasi police, whatever, your response will be slower. And we need to have firm answers to that, and that's not going to be done in 15 minutes in one of these meetings. No. We won't do it justice. Sorry, David Watson, I cut across you.
Yeah, my point was that if there are two competing organisations, I mean, have we asked the other organisation the same questions? Are we being asked to choose between one or the other? Or I just don't quite understand what we are being asked to approve.
I think we're being asked to contribute monetary funding to this organisation because other parish councils have made donations to it.
But who is the other organisation?
There may not be one, David. We don't know. We've only been approached by one organisation. One resident has made one single post saying they are a first responder. And then the original said, oh, they're nothing to do with us. So we don't know. I'll be honest, we don't know. But we've only been approached by one group. Peter.
Well, we're in danger if we don't, if we've effectively been put on notice, there might be two competing. If we only go to one, we're in danger of being accused of
I'm suggesting we do
without any basis.
I'm suggesting we do some work outside the meeting, but now I see,
yeah.
Peter, then Mark.
Yeah, if we recognise what we're talking about here, this first responder scheme is something that it does fall under the auspices of East Midlands Ambulance Services, but there can be any number of, as an individual, you can be trained by East Midlands Ambulance Service to be a first responder. The fire service are first responders. There are a number of organisations that are first responders. What we were approached by this lady in this letter was the Northants first responder group. So they have formed an entity, obviously looking to get some form of synergy, I assume, from being part of a group. But the scheme by East Midlands Ambulance Service is the scheme that all first responders would be linked into, and that's how they get notified that there's an emergency call. So if we've got grey areas, we need to be speaking to EMAS about what is the mechanism, and they would be the ones to set our minds at rest on do we suddenly take a lower priority on a 999 call because we have first responders. But it is the existence of a number of first responders and first responder groups should not be a limitation on activities within the village from the point of view of speedy response. So we do need to have more information. That's why I say I think we need to chase this lady for a response to the 15 or so questions that we asked her. Then we can take it to the next stage, and that would be, I believe, involving the MAS.
Yeah, I think that's sensible. Okay, everybody agree with that? Sorry, Mark. Sorry.
We're not being asked to choose anybody. This is, as Peter said, this is the ambulance service choosing, selecting certain groups to be first responders. The biggest one outside of the ambulance service is, as Pete said, is the fire brigade. they are the biggest first responders in the UK. What we're being asked is by one of the organisations to donate money to them on the off chance that they'll ever take a 999 call in Geddington, Newton or Little Oakley. They may never be used. They may never be selected by the ambulance service to first respond because of various reasons. They're not available. It's not their expertise or whatever the criteria they set, and they may never be used. And yet we're being asked by one organisation to provide money. That's the crux of.
Well, we're doing the right thing. It sounds like we're in violent agreement. We're doing the right thing. We've asked some very comprehensive questions. Hopefully we'll get comprehensive answers. On the strength of that, then we'll decide whether or not we need to meet with the lady or representatives, and then we can, really get involved in it. It's obviously a worthwhile scheme, but we need all the answers. Okay. All right, thank you. Item 8 is parish plan updates. But that was with John, obviously, who's not here tonight. Anybody got anything from John or anything on this at all? Okay. Right, item 9, flooding. 9A, flood working party progress, and B, general updates. Mark, and obviously we've had a bit of correspondence from Richard and Clive as well.
So I'll be really quick and I'll try and answer the correspondence we had as well.
Yeah.
So there's been a few meetings, yourself and Clive, to look at with Clive Curtis and yourself to look at the bund and where the water was coming from. Yourself and I to look at the rest of the pipe work of what's going on. I've also had meetings with Terry and Boughton Estates about Little Oakley. That was very good. And highlighted to Boughton about the ditches that need work on them, and an attenuation pond that's disappeared up on the Chase, which I've identified and found where it is, and hopefully we can get that dug out and reinstated. There's also an attenuation pond on Stamford Road that's been filled in that needs to be redone, and I'm about to speak to the owners about that. Otherwise, a report is pretty much finished. I'm just waiting for one answer to come back and then it's finished. But it's using all of the information we've already got from the village plan and the Pathfinder. KBC planning have been made aware for the housing, the 26 houses on Stamford Road, about how the flooding happened there, so that they've got that to make sure that the answers are made for that. And the GVFB have got an extremely ample supply of sandbags and all made up now. So if there is a response, they know where the pinch points are, they know the criteria, and the fire brigade can move forward to help villagers out a lot more quickly now that we understand where the water's coming from. In terms of the bunds and I've spoken to KBC Environmental about that, and they have said that it's highly unlikely that they'll raise the height of the bunds at the top of Wood Street, purely because they don't think it actually help us very much, and it may cause more problems with water spilling. But they did point out with the measurements, because I pointed out at the time that they needed to weed killer or something. He pointed out, well, if they can't see the pins, therefore it's gone up, not down. The height of the bund has probably gone up a bit because it's covering over the pins, not gone down, because the pins are in solid concrete underneath. But one suggestion that he came up with, which Boughton are looking at, is instead of raising the bunds, we actually level the field, because the field's a V-shape. If we level the field out, we'll get a lot more surface area to actually hold water, and it'll work better. So they're looking at that for us. In terms of the pipe work, all the pipe work from the top of Wood Street down to the exit and the Priory is unadopted. when I asked him would the council adopt it, his unofficial short answer was no. When I asked why, he says it's probably not to spec, and every landowner all the way down will have to pay to upgrade the pipe to the standard that they want it. So his suggestion at the moment was leave it alone because it works. It's a 1 in 20 event buns, and it works. We've only had, since it's been put up, we've only had the one breach in 20 years, so it's doing its job for what it was built for. So that's where we are at the moment. I'll have the full report out. It will be out by the next meeting. But in the meantime, everybody's been made aware who's got stuff. In terms of to preempt Terry, if he's putting his hand up for the Little Oakley stuff, there are some issues about whether the A43 relief road is causing the problems, which Boughton are doing on one with the Environment Agency. I'm talking to Highways, but that's one of the questions I haven't had back yet. That's it from me.
Through you, Chairman. Mark, did Sam come back to you with any information as to whether there was an attenuation pond?
There are 3.
What, in Little Oakley?
No, there's 3 attenuation ponds on the length of the relief road. One on the northern side.
Right.
Looks like it's Prize Court. I can't remember the name of it's the housing estate. It might be from that housing estate, but there's one just to the north and there's 2 in the south. But one's nowhere near Little Oakley. And he hasn't had Environment Agency, haven't come back with him as a sensible answer yet.
Because what I'm getting at is if there isn't one on the south side of the road, and bearing in mind your, archaeological input, whether we ought to be asking Boughton Estates to consider putting one in.
We've got the problem is trying to find out where to put it.
Right.
That's going to be the challenge, because it's, in short, the water coming out of Little Oakley is coming out at the top of the hill, not the bottom of the hill, which is really weird.
Yes,
so,
which is the point that I don't think had got across previously.
No.
But I just wondered if it was on their agenda, because at the other end of the flooding area, he did say that to put a culvert in there which would be adequate would cost £30,000 under the road, didn't he? Yeah. Whereas the existing one isn't up to standard. So I was wondering whether an alternative might be for Boughton to be considering an attenuation somewhere in the field.
He's still waiting for Environment Agency to come back about the attenuation ponds on the relief road, of whether they're working properly.
Okay, thank you.
That'll be the next stage, I think.
Thank you.
Okay. So, okay then, Mark. So you think that, I mean, I know you've done an awful lot of work on this, so thank you. So you think that kind of draft report might be with us before next meeting, which is great.
Yeah,
thanks.
I'd finished it on Saturday and then realised I got some gaps, so I'm just waiting for those answers to be filled.
Yeah. Okay. Are you happy that, is there anybody else to consult with? Are you happy that there's anybody else to speak to, or?
No, because we've got all the data. All the data was already there. We just hadn't collated it.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean that all the actions have to be done. It's identifying, isn't it, a process flow or actions or owners. That's really where it is. It doesn't have to have been complete. It's not going to get completely resolved by this time next month. It's
it's going to take a
having a roadmap.
Yeah, it's just collating all the, like I said, collating all the information, ascertaining where's the water coming from and where's it going, and then how do we implement that plan, which has I've started some of it, but some of it's going to be a year, 2 years down the line. Yeah,
and as long as we've got that embedded within what we do, absolutely, and that's got to be embedded within what we do. Okay, so just going back to, just want to go, only because to be fair, they're good points, which we'd be asking anyway. Going back to Richard and Clive, and then of course they've attached an inspection report. Measuring pins, hard to identify. Recommend weed spray around the pins. To our knowledge, recommend action has not been undertaken. The last measurements were taken, so that still seems to be in dispute whether or not those measurements were taken in December, January? What do you
Yeah,
think?
I haven't looked at it. I asked the question about when I spoke to the guy from environmental, because he wanted to understand what had happened on the floods.
Yeah.
Spoke about the buns and the pins, and they needed weed killer on so we could find them. His comment was, well, if we can't find them because they're under the soil, then soil's gone on top of the pins, so they haven't sunk. It's per se.
Claire is eager to come in.
Yeah, I was at the in 2017. I was with Michael Chester when he came and inspected the bund, and the pins were difficult to find there, but actually there had been a small amount of loss from the top, but as the bund is built of clay, then that was all still intact. It was just the sort of top surface that had been degraded over the 20 years. And I would imagine that the pins are still there and there won't be any vegetation on top of it. I don't know where it would have come from, just fell out the sky on top of the bund. So I would think that the bund is not higher than it originally was.
The bund's always, as long as I've known, has always been covered in grass. I mean, it's a solid concrete block with clay on top, with the pins to show the height of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the last measurement, it hadn't moved.
Yeah, it hadn't grown either. Definitely not.
Well, no, it was a bit of a flippant comment from him that if you can't find the pins, then soil's on top of the pins.
But what happens if the pins are actually broken? Is there a chance of that happening? Because obviously, just to say
they're not fit. They're rebar.
Right.
They're just for measuring it against the side of the road. They take the measurements.
They take it from the church now because they can't do it from the road.
I see. I see. My only question would be is obviously I know we said that it doesn't that they're not that it was a 1 in 20 chance and it doesn't exactly matter. But if those people around the area wanted house insurance, are they having to pay a premium because of this?
Well, the houses are on a designated flood area anyway.
Right, so they would be paying a premium then.
Probably.
See, because to me, that's how I would go about actually dealing with these issues. Because if someone's having to pay more, because I know it's a flood area, like you say, but if someone's having to pay more in the result of something actually happening, then to me that there is an issue and it needs addressing. Like
it's down to risk, David. The bund was built for a 1 in 20 flood occurrence. So it was built for a flood that would happen every 20 years in magnitude.
But they said the berm by the ford was 1 in 100. But obviously, because of the recent weather and climate we've been having, that's actually become more frequent. So
but it's not quite like that, David.
Right. Okay.
So just to answer that first point then, Mark. So it says, could you, the Parish Council, provide a copy of the measurement report or correct the statement, advise on the status of the reference recommendations? So would that be in the report that's coming, or
that won't be in the report because that's separate. That's what the borough council do as part of their maintenance plan.
Yeah. Should we go?
I don't get them. They come to the clerk. So.
Yeah, Anita, could you? Okay, so is that for Anita to potentially go and ask the KBC for?
Yeah.
I mean, they're sorry, Anita. They're saying that some survey or things should have happened in December or January, and it appears that we don't seem to have got any details around that at all. But it could be quite crucial. The residents asked for it, but actually, I think it is possibly quite crucial. It might underpin something that Mark's found or otherwise. Would you be able to go and ask KBC for that and
I'll chase it up.
Append that, if you don't mind, thank you, and append that report which says this is what they were going to do? That'll be useful.
Yeah, they did the site visit, but then there's no measurements being taken. But I will chase it.
Okay. Also asking for visibility of the membership of the working group and the work being undertaken. I mean, Mark, you've just given quite a
I've just
long account
highlighted
of
all
what
the
been
people who've been
taken.
involved so far.
Okay.
as per the resolution.
And as, like I said, just asking the question again, it's not just about making sure everybody's got something to do because everyone's busy, but is there anybody else that could help that hasn't been approached that you know we could help you get answers from, or is there anybody else that you need to speak to, or are you happy?
I'm just waiting for people to come back to me now.
Okay, fine. Okay, and just finally, again, there's obviously just a request to see a copy of the report, but obviously that's a work in progress at the moment. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right then, Mark. Thank you. Any more questions or points for Mark on that on the flooding side? I know that's obviously got many facets and aspects to it. So thanks to Terry as well for helping with that. Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, just go back to the agenda then. Environment. 10A, feedback on meeting with Boughton Estates, Thursday, 25th of February, regarding planned tree felling within the Geddington Chase woodlands. Right. Yeah, a relatively good meeting, I think. I mean, obviously, I put the bit out on Facebook, the kind of summary of the meeting. It seems to have been fairly positively received. I've had a couple of residents come to me since saying, look, you know, I've got some experience in forestry or woodland management, if you want to have a chat, which is great. I've got some more detailed notes that I do need to write up, check with Peter, and there may well be some other odd questions in there to address to Boughton. And the intention is, as I've said, to put a kind of a fuller account on the on Geddington.net. And I must, I've not felt the pressure to do that because things seem to have died down. I think a lot of it's kind of been accepted that the work was necessary. But again, I will, that's my action to write up those notes again, send those to Peter for checking over. And again, if need be, sending parts to Boughton to add additional questions. I've had a piece of correspondence today. Anita may have had a chance to circulate one bit, but certainly not something that's come through the door. Again, very helpful resident in a village who's got significant experience of pathways of kind of wildflowers and meadows and taking care of those. And she and verges, and she's kind of very helpfully given me some information, which again, when myself and Peter have gone through the notes, we might just send to Boughton to say, look, we've got some information, some questions extra around that. But I think at the moment that's gone down the right track. So if nobody minds, I'll respond to that. So the helpful resident that sent that, and I'll mention that we'll send that through with any residual questions. Sorry, I mean, does anybody else have any more points on this? I think actually we've tended to mostly put it to bed. David?
Is that a potential pathway warden?
I'm not sure, potentially. The lady seems to have a lot of expertise and a lot of interest, which is great. Could be. Peter?
We did get just subsequent to the meeting, the feedback that Boughton gave us was their detailed plan of areas of the woodland and their intention for selective felling and clear felling and thinning of five different 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 6 different areas. And I think one of the key things that I'd like to sort of flag is that we really have to recognise the fact that as far as Boughton are concerned, trees are a crop, and forestry management could also be seen as tree farming. So the fact that they choose to fell trees, provided it's done within the confines of a felling licence and a woodland management programme, both of which Boughton assure us are in place for any of their intended works, then it really is a question of them using their own resources. And they were at great pains to point out that the conservation work they have to do within forests does need funding, and that is part funded by having the opportunity of cutting their own trees down and selling their wood. And a second thing that I think we need to recognise is the the difference in perspective and timescales, because we did talk to the forestry manager and the land agent, and they refer to short-term and long-term, but their short-term is sort of 20 to 40 years, and their long-term is 150 to 200 years. So we are looking at something that's fundamentally different to what we see as people of a certain age as short-term and long-term. So it's when they say, for example, that an area will be clear felled, and in the short term it will look fairly open, but in the medium and longer term it will fill over. As I say, their definition of short term is not really what we would have we would normally see as short term. They are saying that where they clear an area, yes, we are talking 20 to 40 years before there's a substantial tree growth that that takes over.
Thank you, Peter. And again, I think it's, yeah, we'll set that expectation in the longer written brief. As you heard me say last time, it is pretty regrettable that we've kind of had to do this. We did speak politely but very frankly with Boughton about better communication, and as Peter says, you know, what they view is, and it probably is quite proper. However, with several hundred residents walking through there every day, it's probably just good also another form of land management to tell people what's going on, a point that we did make explicitly clear. Okay, so
but
again,
the only point I'd sort of like to specifically flag there is that they don't see their requirement as only cutting down diseased or damaged trees. You know, the trees that grow there are a crop.
Yeah, and as Pete said, there's a lot more detail around, say, the other conservation things they're doing with butterflies and all sorts. But again, it'll all be in the longer written brief. Okay, thank you. Item 10B, discussion regarding vandalism within the recreation ground and potential for CCTV. Peter.
Yeah, that I assume everybody has seen the photographs of the vandalism that took place most recently to the shelter, which we will not refer to as a teenage shelter. Anyone can shelter under it. There was some discussion about the fact that we'd obviously only comparatively recently had the shelter cleaned from the previous vandalism. We're still in the process of Anita's still in the process of getting quotations for the work to be carried out. There was a suggestion that we should be looking at CCTV cameras for that area, and I acknowledge the fact that it is something that should be brought into consideration. It's on the table that we should discuss it. There are certain controls and regulations. There is we would have to comply with the surveying camera code, the SC code, and that code of practice does map out 12 principles, which is that there shall be a legitimate need. We as a parish council are empowered to install CCTV cameras. So there are all of the mechanisms there, and the 12 points of principle on the code of practice do identify things like retention, who's able to see the images, and retention of images and things like that. It's then questionable whether we feel that cameras are advisable or a necessity. There are a range of cameras. For example, there's this one that I've got, which is a wildlife camera. It costs about £50. It doesn't need wiring in. It works from batteries. It does do infrared nighttime shots and things like that. So there is opportunities for a system there, but it's debatable whether we feel that CCTV cameras would be necessary. If we were to put in any cameras, one of the principles and the code of practice, you have to have signage there. You can have signage there without cameras, and if we were to feel that CCTV cameras were not the way to go, what I did want to bring to council is the fact that our quoting procedure should include the provision of vandal-proof paint. We should be specifying that it gets a vandal-proof coating such that aerosol can then be easily removed, rather than what we would possibly have if they simply come and paint it. Then we would be literally back where we started if they came 2 days later and sprayed graffiti on it again. So I think there's two issues. I asked for it to be listed to show that we would be discussing CCTV cameras, and I'd like others to have their view on that. But I would also then, as a separate item, request that we do make sure that our quotation specification does include vandal-proof painting. So that's my input.
Thanks, Peter. Shall we just deal with that second bit first? So, Anita, just going from the minutes and the actions, what's happened with that? Did we get some quotes back? Did anybody
We've got quotes from 2 of the 5 I contacted. I'm still waiting for 1 quote, but what I'll do, I'll send out to the 2 who have submitted quotes, one of which was that came out to look at it in person, one of which has had the photos, to say, does this include vandal-proof paint? Because the quotation I have seen so far for one of them definitely doesn't. And I can't recall seeing it on the other one, actually. So I need to clarify that, and they might want to amend their quotation as a result of that.
They might do. I mean, I'm just thinking, Anita, you might want to be polite, but stipulate, well, we do need vandal-proof paint.
Yeah.
And if does your quote include that?
Yeah.
If it needs to be amended, please let us know, and please let us know please confirm the brand of the paint that you'll use and any specification. Sorry, Peter, I'm probably jumping in, putting words in your mouth, but
No, perfect.
I just think that might be helpful. But then again, I'm jumping right ahead. Does everybody agree with that, what Peter's saying? Sorry, I ran right ahead there. But again, we could just be doing this all over and over again. It just seems to me that, poor residents are scraping it off and then we're paying for it to get repainted. Okay, thank you. Would you mind doing that, Anita, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. So sorry, and that was the second bit that I just hijacked. Sorry. But Peter raised the issue of the CCTV camera. And Peter, just remind us, where would that be mounted or perched, so to speak? Where would that be?
It could be mounted anywhere, but obviously the reservations about, let's be candid, although I asked for it to be added to the agenda, I do have certain reservations about CCTV images that are taken from security cameras under the best of circumstances. People tend to have their back to them, they tend to have hoods up. The value, I believe, of CCTV cameras is primarily as a deterrent more than as a mechanism for catching vandals. And since there's 2 options, you can either have them as very, very large, obvious cameras, or you don't see them, but you do need signage under any set of circumstances. And it should not be, you have to have the signage so that it's not a covert image capture. It has to be overt. But you don't have to necessarily point out where the cameras are. And I think we've all seen examples of where CCTV cameras are in place in this area where there's plenty of signage and you don't necessarily see the cameras. And I candidly, you asked the question, where would you be able to put the cameras? I say this sort, they're very efficient because they're camouflaged. You can put them in trees and things like that. And I use this regularly for game. That's South Africa for you. Sorry, we don't get much game out there. It's more small animals. Yes, but yes, to monitor wildlife. But it does give wonderful images, so we use it whenever we go away for monitoring the back of the house as well. So okay, well, let's go anywhere.
Let's throw it open to councillors then. Anybody's opinion? Dave Rushton first.
Yeah, and obviously I assume that your camera is battery powered or storage. So how long would it be? Could you keep it on film for before it fills up the storage device? Are we talking days, hours?
Yeah, well, yeah, it takes a a chip, and when we put it up, I usually bring it in. Obviously, it depends upon the level of activity. And one of the things we should recognise is that when I put it up in the trees at the back of my garden, we don't necessarily get the same level of activity as you would with people walking by in front of the shelter in the recreation ground. So its battery life would be less than we get, but we get a couple of weeks battery life, and then they are rechargeable batteries. It is something that would not be, I would not suggest the sort of thing that I was just showing you there as a permanent measure. It would be something that if we put up signage, we could occasionally use something like that. As I say, the chances of actually getting images that were suitable for pursuing a matter and taking any form of prosecution would be
I would say on that is that CCTV obviously is the standard way of obviously going about things, but obviously it's all subject to cost and other bits and pieces, see if there's any other measures. So thank you.
Okay, Mark.
Thank you. I have to say I'm really sceptical about putting CCTV in a children's play area. And to cover the fact that we've only, from my recollection, we've only had 3 instances of graffiti on the time I've been a parish councillor. 2 of them fairly recently. One was 12 years ago, and on the benches, and I cleaned that up as well. But putting over covert CCTV in the play area is, I think, it's a big no-no for me. There's no way I'd support that. Doing it as a full-blown, it'd have to be powered, because batteries are just going to be way too much maintenance, and the cost to actually put power into that area is just going to be a fortune. And for the fact we've only had 3 instances, I don't think it's cost effective. I couldn't support CCTV there.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else have a view either way on this?
I think I'll just reiterate what Mark said. I mean, my experiences of CCTV, certainly within my workplaces, are relatively ineffective. You've got to rely on somebody showing their face to it. But also the cost is very inhibitive, and unless there is significantly more instances of it, then I think anti-graffiti paint, so it's a lot easier to clean up, solves a lot of the issue.
And anybody else? Sorry, Peter. And before Peter comes back, anybody else have an opinion or view? Go on, Claire. Then Peter.
I would just like to say I'm not a big fan of CCTV anywhere. I'd be much happier to see the paint, and then we can deal with these things as they occur, however many months or years between the incidents.
Okay. Peter, then David Watson.
My personal opinion is essentially the same as other councillors have mentioned. I did want it to be discussed within council because it was an issue being raised by villagers, and I thought it was necessary that it had opportunity for discussion within the open forum. My view is I don't see that the benefit is adequate for the expense of a full-blown installed system, and I advocated, as I said earlier, that as we've agreed, we go for the vandal-proof paint. Thank you.
Okay, David Watson. You're on mute, David.
Whether this was a subject for the village meeting.
Potentially. I mean, I think Peter's raising it now because it was raised on Facebook as something. Why don't we look at this? Why don't we look at that, etc. Sorry, Terry.
I just think that Big Brother's watching enough of our activities already. I go along with Claire's view.
Yeah. I think we're in violent agreement. I'll put the footnote on. As you're probably aware, one of my jobs, I sell CCTV for a living, effectively, and it's an awful lot more expensive than you think. There is the running, the power. It's getting the quality right to be able to discern images. You're going to need infrared. This only happens at night, and then, like you say, then there's the civils works, the construction, etc. And I think, as we've said, in terms of the the damage at the moment, whatever. Risk to life, that's a whole different conversation, and we'll have that conversation if it ever arises. Hopefully not. But yeah, I think what we're saying is that it's a good idea. The resident have brought it up, but I think the what we get out of it is just far outweighed by the cost and the imposition, of course, let alone the fact, as we started by saying, you have a CCTV camera in a children's play area. So thanks for bringing it up, Peter. But yeah, I think it's a resounding no. So, but thank you. Okay. So right, item 10C, discussion regarding the river area immediately downstream of the Geddington Bridge, which is an interesting thing you've raised, Peter.
Okay. I was just going to see about sharing images, which is as I've been taking a course on this from Claire, and
looks like she's taught you everything she knows.
Yeah, I seem to have lost everything now. This is wonderful. Okay, come back you. Raise you. Oh damn it. Okay, don't worry. The pictures are going to show you what my attempt at showing the extent of the problem. As I mentioned in an email when I asked for it to be included on the agenda, the very strong flood that we got in at the end of last year, the amount of water that came through did change the natural contours of the riverbed immediately downstream of the bridge, such that underneath the arches where the water flows through, it did churn away significant stones and certainly the sub base. It's created a very nice and very attractive additional bank slightly further down on the village side of the river, or on the cross side of the river, I should say. So it looks very attractive. My only concern is the fact that it has created. Oh yeah, thank you very much. You can. Yeah,
sorry, just found them. Just trying to.
So that bank on the right there is actually quite new. There was the one on the left here is where the children have always paddled. There's always been something on the right as well, but it's much more pronounced now with much larger stones. You can see there. And then I don't know if I had sent the one of was it in the same mail that showed the view looking down?
I'm just looking for it, Peter. Yeah, I think I'm sharing the wrong thing. Just a minute. It's right. Just one second. I will get there.
Thank you very much. You're doing better than I was, and I'd got them all ready as well. Stop smirking, Claire.
There we go.
Getting your own back.
Is that what you're after, Peter?
That's it. Yes, that gives some indication. You can see where the water's obviously coming down the underneath the arches. You can see a different colour there to the bits between the arches, and that's because between the arches there's the existing bank, but in those three areas there are deep ponds, and I did actually take measurements, and they are over 1 metre deep, even when the water is at the level that it was when I took those photographs. And now a couple of times since there, Sarah Pask has had to close the ford because the river's been deeper. This was when it was open and it was fairly low level of flow rather. But there are deep ponds, and you get an idea from that image that's on the screen there, where you can see the gravel area. Children can be paddling on that, literally step 1 or 2 paces away, and they're in a void that's about 1 metre deep. Now, as I say, it looks glorious, and you can see in that image again the almost like a cascade by the time you look at the right hand side of that, with the various banks there that are letting the water down. But the signage, and that was in the same email, and I don't know if you can find that. The only signage that exists that warns anybody is the closest one is adjacent to the play equipment. It's 20 odd meters away from the entrance to the berm, and you don't go past the sign to get in there. So parents would be going in there with children during our summer They'll be doing their paddling, which they've done for years, but there would be, that's the sign. And then there was another one that I angled round to show how far away that is from the entrance. The sign is quite small. You can see it's a KBC sign. There are a number of signs along there. There's another one right along by the gate at the other end of the berm. It's about the same distance in from that. That shows where the sign is in relationship to the entrance to the berm. So it isn't adequate signage. So I'm flagging a safety concern, which would be minimised or reduced by having adequate signage closer to the entrance. If we were to try to remodel the stone or the riverbed by dragging that stone back in, it would be confronted by the same at a later stage. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. We may decide that actually it's not adequate to have just signage there, that areas immediately adjacent to ankle deep paddling that suddenly become a metre deep are dangerous, and we should do something about it. So that's my input. It's open for review and discussion.
Just a quick one, if it's okay. What I'm going to say is, obviously it is concern as well, but have we mentioned this as well in our risk assessment as well, when we done the bits and pieces with other bits and pieces with the insurance and stuff? Is this something that we covered? I know obviously we need to get it addressed, but I'm just thinking if anything happens in the meantime, are we covered for this?
There was a line within the risk assessment that talks about an annual review that we do of the physical infrastructures, and this would come underneath that.
Is this not an Anglia water issue? They're responsible, the Environment Agency, they're responsible for the river. I mean, I believe we ought to put another notice up, or one or two notices, but I think in terms of the bed of the river, we don't have the technical expertise, as far as I'm aware of, to play around with riverbeds.
Maybe not. Sorry, Mark was next, and Mark may have the answer to that, actually.
Two things. One, you may not, David probably knows, because he was in the brigade at the time when we did it, but 20 years ago, the fire brigade dredged out between the weir and about 2 meters on, there's a great big concrete slab set vertically, goes down about 15 feet, that was put in there in the 50s to capture sediment as it came down, and over the years it's filled up. Fire brigades spent a weekend about 20 years ago digging it out, moving many skips of silt away, just so you're aware. So if you try and remodel it, you might suddenly hit solid concrete. But also, I'm not 100% certain it's our property.
No.
Certainly halfway, certainly where the big pit deeps are, that is not council property, so we can't start messing with it. But I think the boundary is when you go through the Burton Gate, there's another fence. And I think that is the boundary for the land opposite. They own the whole lot. So officially, people shouldn't be in there because it's that bit's private property. And it's certainly not council property. We shouldn't be spending money and messing around trying to redesign a river that next piece of heavy rain will just move it anyway.
Yeah. And sorry, I apologise because I was almost butting in, but it was a point that both of you and David were making, and it reminded me, anything that would be done, we would have to do through the Environment Agency anyway, because even landowners have to, anything that alters the course of the river, the bed of the river, or work in adjacent to the river has to be put before the Environment Agency. So we couldn't, if we'd have said, let's go and drag all the stone back, and I was not advocating that, but if we'd have said that, we would have had a long process to go through anyway. So really, my suggestion is that we at least need signage there, but I would take guidance on whether, because I'm flagging it as a safety issue, I would take guidance on whether we feel that if we put signage there, we're actually acknowledging there's a safety issue, and how that would affect our insurance.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I just want to flag up, we've got 8 minutes left. councillors. That's all. Sorry, Mark, you're going to come back.
Can I just suggest then we put a sign up that says maybe deep water, paddle at your own risk.
Yeah, proceed with caution or something. Yeah.
Because
yeah.
In heavy water, with the gates closed anyway, we have to do that for the Environment Agency. And at the end of the day, it's not 100% certain it's actually our responsibility because it's not our water.
Yeah. So when we say put a sign up, we're looking for something fairly heavy duty, the kind of thing that we might ask Ken Signs or another supplier to do for us.
Yeah, just put it on the gate.
Yeah.
And attach it. And precisely what wording would you like to say? I'm just conscious of time. Sorry, I'm hurrying. Is it just caution, deep water?
Well, the KBC signage has got danger, steep banks and fast flowing water, or words to that effect. I mean, it showed in the image.
Is it like uneven surface or something?
Yeah, well,
caution. Yeah,
I think that
I wouldn't mention the surf. Sorry, Peter. I'd just say fast moving water.
Yeah. There may even be guidelines on the sort of signage that you should have adjacent to water.
Okay, Paul.
Sorry, are we not better off just replicating the KBC sign and putting it closer so it's viewable?
The KBC sign was put in for when the berm was first put in, and was when no one was supposed to be in there. So we've got agreement from the Environment Agency. We can bend the rules in good weather.
Yeah, I think what Paul's saying is I'll try and share the screen again. It says KBC, beware of steep banks and fast flowing water. I think
let's just
yeah. I mean, again, we don't need to put KBC on it or Geddington Parish Council, but if we can make that, whatever. Are you happy for me to get a quote from Ken Signs for that, and provided it's under?
Yes, under 100 quid, just get on with it, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, get on with it.
Yeah. And get that fixed.
I would just suggest that we perhaps that wording, because it doesn't clearly state that we're talking about variations in depth of the water. I think that we need to be a little bit clever with the wording, not just replicate the KBC wording.
Okay.
Because that just says your fast flowing or whatever.
I think we need to recognise there is deep water there.
Yes.
There's a lot of children, toddlers, all sorts in that water in the summer being ignored by parents.
If the council give me some leeway, then I'll speak to Peter Moat at Ken Signs and get him to mock something up for us, and I'll send that around. And like I say, I think we can be forgiven if we don't call a full meeting to get agreement. I'll contact Peter tomorrow and ask for his help on this and get appropriate wording in. Okay. Sorry, I'm rushing that, Peter, but that was important and we needed to get that resolved. Thank you. Peter, we have 5 minutes left, and
very quick.
Yeah.
The item D, Loversport UK Cricket Club update. There's another meeting scheduled for the 16th of March, after which we would be coming back to the parish council with the results of the meetings that have taken place, with something to vote on. If there's no questions, I'll move on to E, which is the Village Hall car park extension update. Mark already alluded to the impact of unitary on planning meetings. We had an extension to the 27th of March, but as he said, the last planning meeting committee meeting is going to take place on the 16th of March, and there may well then be none until June. So it would look, since there were objections, even though some of those may well fall away from ECB, for example, it would look like we won't get anything before a planning committee meeting until June. So that really brings us to I've covered both of those now.
Are we going to get to the post office?
Well, it's Nick to take the next item.
Well, go on, Terry. Stone Pitland.
As I sent an email, I've heard nothing from Post, nothing since the acknowledgement. I've chased them up, no reply because of COVID. I'll chase them again tomorrow.
Thank you, Terry. Yes, that will become very pertinent as we get throughout this year. Thank you. So sorry, post office then, with our last 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll be quick on this then. So we've, as we know, we've been trying to get hold of Pat, no joy. my contact at the post office that I said I'd contact last month came through, and I've had a conversation with the area manager, who's suggested that we have a temporary pop-up post office in the meantime until they can sort it out. He's met with Cafe Oak. Cafe Oak have agreed to allow him to use their cafe area, especially being at the moment it's closed. And he'll come in, set it all up for 2-hour sessions, and then take it all down, go away again. I had a conversation with him this afternoon, and following the Facebook post I put on to find out what the level of use and acceptance would be, he's agreed to go to the area manager to say recommends that they go ahead for 2-hour sessions every week at Cafe Oak. So that hopefully we'll know on Wednesday whether that happens. He'll let Cafe Oak and myself know on Thursday, and the first session will be after the Easter holidays, because he's on holiday for Easter week and doesn't want to start it and then stop and start again. So that will go ahead, and then we can gauge then what the response is. One bad thing it does is usually when there's a pop-up done and there's a post office nearby, that post office is deemed to have closed. So that is the downer. But at the moment, we haven't got a post office. We haven't had it for nearly a year. And from what I remember, Pat's not a postmaster. So if he wanted to open tomorrow, he couldn't anyway without getting someone in. So I think for the villagers, we've been trying to sort out, this is the best option. And then anyone who wants anything that comes off the post office at a later date, at least they'll have some gauge of its usage, and we can, Ricky, who's the postmaster, who's helping us out, will be able to help them moving forward. So potentially it's all good.
Yeah, sounds good. Peter.
Very quick point. I think excellent work that Mark's been doing there to get something temporary set up. I just caution, we must be conscious of the fact that the level of use of a pop-up shop, sort of 2 hours twice a week, or whatever it might be, there's different. That's a different level of convenience to a shop that's, if it were to be a real shop, it would be open all the time. So I'd hate to find that the lack of hours that are available it would reflect in the amount of usage, and I would hate that level of usage to be used as a lever to say, well, it wasn't used that much. You know, it's an excellent move. It gives us something we haven't got, but the people, it wouldn't have the same level of convenience as the village post office had.
Anyone who wants to take over the post office will have to have a full interview business plan with the post office. They have overriding agreement, even from Boughton. Boughton can't lease the post office to anybody without the post office saying yes to that person. So if the post office don't like the business plan, it ain't going ahead with the post office in there.
Okay. Any more on post office, folks? We've got about 1 minute left. Thank you, Mark, for your intervention on that. Newton and Little Oakley, David and Terry, is there anything you wish to
Nothing from
raise
me.
which not been raised?
No, I think you've had all those over the last year.
Okay, thank you. In that case, if no any other business at all, in that case, thank you very much, everybody, for your attention tonight. It was a fast ball, but everyone, thank you very much. Really appreciate your attention.